Hey guys, welcome back to another League video, and this is going to be sort of a discussion type video but also a mini guide because I wanted to help out my fellow top mains in feeling less useless about themselves. See, the title of this video is Why Top Feels Useless, and before I get people in the comments telling me what an idiot I am and how there are people like TF Blade who got rank 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 all at the same time, please remember that the video is called Why Top Feels Useless, not why it is. Top lane, just like any of the 5 lanes, is far from that. In fact, top lane can actually be one of the most impactful roles in the game, it's just not in the way everyone thinks. Because of the way League has been standardized over the years, yeah, we'll call it standardized. There's been a lot of conventions made for the game. No, I'm not talking about conventions like TwitchCon. I'm talking conventions as in a way in which things are done, like the conventional way to have coffee is with milk and sugar, not with vodka. Tangents aside, we've come a very long way since the very experimental and innovative periods of Season 4 and those that came before, so the 5 main roles of League have been set in stone for a while. That leads us to today's topic, in that prevailing wisdom has a lot of top mains feeling really frustrated in the sort of ostensible coin flip nature of the role because of how isolated it is from the rest of the map. The way each role carries comes with nuances, but the general principle remains mostly the same. All 5 roles carry based on how much pressure they can exert on the map. For example, junglers are able to carry based on how much presence they command around the map and their ability to establish territorial control. Mid laners can carry by having the highest roaming potential of all the laners, being able to go top or bot lane depending on the situation, as well as aiding the jungler with invades and counter jungling. Bot and support establish their dominance through numbers advantage and dragon control, which is often why there's a greater incentive to prioritize winning bot lane over most other lanes because you stand to gain and lose a lot more. That leaves just top lane, who many people believe can only really carry through split pushing or TP ganking bot lane, which is by proxy just helping the bot lane carry the game. Because of the preconceived notion that top laners have too little reward for any form of investment to be worthwhile, a lot of players elect to just leave their respective top laners to their own devices and hope that theirs is just a superior player through winning or losing by way of 1v1 solo kills. Occasionally you might see either of the junglers make their way to top to score a quick first blood or two in order to get snowball rolling for other lanes. If we combine the standard convention of carrying a game with a lack of conspicuous incentives to invest any team-wide resources into top lane, it does become apparent that top lane feels like a very useless lane and most games are decided victories or failures on the other 4 players. But before I get into the various reasons why I feel like top lane is heavily underestimated and more importantly misunderstood, I want to first acknowledge on the factors that are conducive as to why initially it does come off that way. Summoner's Rift as a whole features 5 champions versus 5 champions, each starting with 20% of the team's total sense of pressure, and that pressure is then pitted against each other, beginning with the 20% versus 20% matchup across each role, and where the objective is to just elevate your team's total pressure while synchronously mitigating the enemy teams. Any form of advantage gained during the early game will then steal a percentage of pressure from one side to the other and vice versa, creating a sort of tug-of-war battle. By the way, when I say advantage, I refer to any quantifiable assets such as stats, level, items, and what have you. If we go back to the ways a role can draw pressure, I'm going to quickly list again what the general community's perception of each role's methods to obtain an advantage are. Junglers can increase their pressure through arguably the most amount of ways of any role: ganking, stealing enemy camps, vision denial, and Rift Herald or Dragon Secure. Ganking is pretty self-explanatory. If you score a kill, blow summoner spells, or force the opponent out of lane for a bit, you not only gain advantage for yourself by having one less lane to worry about for a bit, but you also get some gold and experience for the kill, more if you decide to tax. Stealing enemy camps denies the enemy jungler gold and experience, and taking it for yourself. Vision denial is a little bit more abstract since it doesn't exactly mean you're stronger in a fight, but the less the enemy team knows where you are at any given time, the more they have to play with the concern that you might be there, which could erode confidence. Technically speaking, vision denial isn't exclusive to the jungler, as any role can do this, but due to their wandering nature, junglers do get the most benefit and most access to this form of advantage. Lastly, it's Rift Herald and Dragon Secures. While this one may involve more people besides the jungler, being able to secure these objectives ensures a more stable transition to the mid-game with less to worry about, ultimately benefiting your team overall in the long run. As for mid laners, their methods include kills, lane priority, and roam potential. While it's a pretty short list at first glance having 3 methods, all of these are very straightforward in what they can accomplish. By gaining more advantage through gold economy, it not only makes things much harder for the enemy mid laner, but it can put a lot more stress on the top and bot laners because most mid laners have enough mobility and or range to be able to make quick rotations to both edges of the map to extend their lead even further. You essentially double as the second jungler. Lane priority and roam potential go hand in hand because mid laners are most available when it comes to assisting the jungler in any form of counter jungle or roam. It can turn a 1v1 into a 2v1 or by following them to gank a lane resulting in a 3v1 top or 4v2 bot. It's extremely impactful if played correctly, but it is a little bit harder in my opinion than that of a jungler or bot lane. In the bot lane, I'm going to separate the two roles since they do serve different purposes. The carry role generally has only one thing they care about when it comes to gaining advantage, and that's just kills and farm. The more kills you get, the faster you get your core items, and the faster you can reach mid-game and actually do your job. The main focus of early game pressure is actually the support, so if anything it's more of a 10% and 30% pressure distribution down bot lane than a 20-20. The onus falls on supports to basically carry the early game, as many players would agree that a skilled carry requires at least a somewhat competent support to enable them, while a truly exceptional support can make even a mediocre carry feel really powerful. However, gaining advantage as a support may also be the most difficult of any role in their game, as their methods are lane presence, vision control, and roam potential. The reason why I say supports have it the hardest, if not the second hardest, is because by nature they're not meant to carry. The only thing they can do is make it easy for their teammates to do so, not to mention they don't get many items or experience, so it's hard to gauge how effective they are up front in terms of stats, but supports do have profound impacts, especially in the early game, since they're usually the ones to make the first move in a fight. It's important also to mention that a good support establishes most of their pressure through their sheer presence in lane, picture Leona or Thresh against the Vayne and Janna. It can be quite intimidating, particularly if the support in question is very good with their zoning and skill shots. Denying vision in the bot lane is also a bigger deal since carries are usually squishy, meaning supports are the only ones who can protect themselves and their partner in the event of a tower dive or something like that. It's a little hard to explain supports without spending more than a few minutes, so I'll just leave it at that. Bringing us once again back to top lane, what exactly can they do to leverage their pressure in the early stages of the game? Well, not much. Mostly just kill, occasionally deny enemy camps and establish lane priority, but that's about it. While top laners can theoretically do everything a mid laner can, in terms of establishing pressure and adding in the fact that they can use teleport, it's not exactly as easy to execute though. Roaming mid lane or the top side of enemy jungler is what many top laners would do during any downtime between waves, since you don't sacrifice that much lane presence, but since champions up there are generally slower than most others, there's not much you can do unless you're playing someone like Riven or Camille who have equal parts mobility and burst damage to do quick gank, or camp clear and make it back in time before they lose too many minions. Usage of teleport around the map is also valid, but due to how committal it is by nature, many top laners can harbor aversions to using it in that fashion, since the chance of your teleport meaning absolutely nothing is too high to warrant using it without surefire guarantee you'll get something out of it. Add in the fact that teleport has the highest cooldown of any summoner spell in the early stages of the game. So, needless to say, the options you have in the top lane to make any meaningful impact on the map in terms of your pressure is limited. More often than not, regardless of how much of a lead you get in the early game, you won't get a chance to exercise that lead unless you either get the first tower extremely early in the game or both teams see fit to spend the early game contesting the solo lanes, which I will say is becoming gradually more frequent in Season 10 since Riot has been making a push to have the solo lanes be more impactful. But the point of this video isn't for recency's sake, it's meant to discuss why top lane has been isolated as a role for the past decade. Initially, many people took the stance that because of dragons being positioned on the bottom side of the map, compounding on the fact that gaining advantage on two champions is infinitely more beneficial than one, it makes sense to pitch a tent mid and bot where you can gain more mileage out of a gank than just a kill or maybe a couple tower plates. In response, Riot's attempt at tipping the scales on the obvious lack of leverage on the top side of the map was the Rift Herald, and ever since it can spawn up to twice, it does present a veritable objective to secure on the map, but the problem is 9 times out of 10 the jungler simply secures the Herald by themselves given how weak Shelly is to the point where junglers can solo her without losing any more than like 30% health. Ravenous Hunter junglers also get to heal a lot every time they strike her eye. I think you get the idea by now. It's pretty clear that there just isn't much incentive to want to do anything to enable the top laner since you get less return on your investment most of the time. And because top laners are usually left to their own devices with restricted means of gaining advantage, they often take much longer to exert any pressure or impact they could potentially have around the map. Consequently, this leads to a lot of top mains resigning to the notion that there's very little they can do to alter the course of a game until the mid game where everyone starts roaming and swapping lanes. But after saying all the reasons why top feels useless, I don't want to leave you guys on such a depressing note. After all, the important part of the video is what you can do to better understand that top lane's actually an extremely powerful role, just not in the way everyone thinks. While it's true that the main way to win a game is just to carry a bigger stick, just like everything in life, if there exists something, there also exists the inverse of it. The most common theoretical example would be in this basic concept. There are two ways to complete something, to either win or make everyone else lose. The latter of which is very rarely acknowledged and understood in League of Legends. Just like how 3000 gold is completely worthless until it's actually converted into an item, pressure in and of itself makes no difference if it's not being properly weaponized. Top lane's greatest strength is not their split push or high 1v1 potential, making it dangerous to confront them alone. Although both do attest to that, it's actually their ability to draw pressure. The isolated nature of top lane is often seen as a con because it means anything that happens up there will rarely impact the rest of the map, especially early on, which means if you can force the enemy team to send resources and manpower to the top lane, you can remove a lot of pressure on behalf of your team throughout the rest of the map. And that's where the strong split push and dueling power comes into play, because typically, in order to shut down a strong top laner, or let's say if your top is behind and the other team is fed, you'll need 2, 3, or even 4 people to break their tempo. And that means all that pressure, anywhere between 60 to 80%, will be pitted against the enemy top laner's maybe 30%. That offsets a large amount of impact for the rest of your team. Admittedly, this isn't an easy task. In fact, it may even be harder to master than that of support, since it does take a trained eye to know which method is most effective in drawing pressure, and that differs from game to game. Drawing pressure can be done on a micro scale or a macro scale. Speaking on micro, that can come in the form of single instances such as suppressing the enemy backline in a team fight, which allows for your teammates to wipe out the enemy frontline and back you up. That's if you're still alive, of course. In terms of macro, it can come in the form of split pushing, but that's not all there is to it. It should also be said that the reason why top laners rarely get much attention is often because they shouldn't need it. This may be a very controversial opinion, but I believe top lane to be the most powerful individual category of champions in the entire game. Several champions have a terrifying reputation of being nearly unstoppable once they achieve their core build, even more so when reaching 6 items, which is often why the only people who can beat top laners are usually other top laners. I understand that there are cases where even if you go 5-0 in lane but the enemy bot lane's 3-0, it feels like you stand no chance. But remember, it's not always about KDA, it's more about how you're able to draw pressure. Top laners have routinely the lowest kill death ratios and the lowest kill participation of all 5 roles, but they don't need it. Your objective as the top laner is usually that of a disruptor. In other words, you can carry games by blocking the enemy team from carrying. Many champions fielded in the top lane carry much higher levels of damage and sustainability at practically all stages of the game. So while they may not be able to leverage their own pressure that well, they're very effective in shutting down enemy pressure. Simply put, top laners have a very meaningful job that just so happens to be inconspicuous and thankless. True, the best way for you to win a game is to carry a bigger stick than the enemy team. But another way you can win is just to take away the enemy team's stick, and top lane champions are pretty good at that. As for how to do that, I think that's better saved for another video since this one's getting pretty long. To all the top mains out there, just know that top is not as coin flip as you might think. Sure, most of the challenger ladder consists of junglers and mid lane mains, but there are still quite a few top laners that routinely place very high on the ladder. As of the time this video is released, 3 out of the top 10 spots in North America Challenger are top mains. Carrying comes in many different shapes and forms. Unfortunately, because of how the general culture in the game has developed, people think top is useless just because they don't have the highest kills or the most damage on the team. You may not be the flashiest role in the game, but you definitely have equally as much impact around the map, if not more. You just have to change the way you view carrying as a top laner. We're actually more like supports in that regard than we are mid or bot laners. Anyway, I hope this video was insightful for those who needed it and entertaining for those who wanted it. I know it was a relatively vague video and it didn't exactly tell you how to carry better as a top laner, but the point of the video again was just to spark discussion on the various reasons as to why top lane feels like such a coin flip. Just also remember that there will always be games you can't win. That's just how the game is. No one has a 100% win rate in League, and so here and there you might find games where your team goes 0-15 by 10 minutes. It happens. The important thing is to know that you have a lot more agency than you might think. It just may not be as straightforward as the other roles. If you enjoyed this video, a rating would be much appreciated, and be sure to check out my other League videos if this is your first time here. I do enjoy discussion topics, so if that suits your fancy, then consider subscribing for more content. But for now, that is going to be it. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon in the next video. Take care.